with China. We will upgrade our alliance with India to make sure they're on side as well. Turn Taiwan into a porcupine. And yes, move more of our naval assets, run a destroyer through the Taiwan Strait every month if that's what's necessary. But after that, our commitments will change. And if we move from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity, then China knows it will not be in their self-interest to aggress on Taiwan until we have achieved true independence. And after that, I'm not going to send our sons and daughters to die to fight somebody else's civil war. But until then, that is a vital national security interest. And I do think it takes an outsider to be able to see it that way.
All right, a couple of quick things. You said to fight someone else's civil war. That would be a major change in American policy to declare that a civil war would be the way to figure out the Taiwan issue, number one. Number two, you said to deter Chinese aggression. Does that mean that you would categorically say American forces would defend Taiwan?
My message to Xi Jinping is you do not mess with the United States of America and you do not mess with our interests. And our interests include Taiwan until we have achieved semiconductor independence. So, yes, I will be very clear that we are fully prepared to actually see that through, that we will move for 2 Ohio-class SSGNs to the South China Sea as well as to the Pacific. We will move destroyers through the Taiwan Strait. We will enter our alliance with India. We will pull Russia out of its military alliance with China by ending the Ukraine war. This is how we deter them. But after 2028, after the end of my first term, we will be in a position to say our commitments will be different. Xi Jinping will not go for Taiwan until the end of my first term. I'm confident of that. And that is how we secure American interests while avoiding nuclear war. I do think that this will be the most important element of our foreign policy for whoever's the next president. And I think the strategic clarity that I'm offering is actually more likely to secure peace than the position of strategic ambiguity that the U.S. has so far adopted.
All right, we'll move on to Victor Rottinghaus in Iowa. He's a truck driver and a veteran of the U.S. military, joining us from Des Moines. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Ramaswamy. With all the division, we would like to know who are your top cabinet picks that you would choose to seek advice and counsel from?
All right, I think I'll clarify just a little bit in that it's early, right?
Yes.
In this process. So it may not be early yet and fair yet to make you pick an actual cabinet as of now with names. But if we zoom out a little bit, give us some names of either Donald Trump's cabinet, Joe Biden's cabinet, Barack Obama's cabinet, even George W. Bush's cabinet, that are of the type of people you would look for.
So look, when it comes to foreign policy, I believe in Cold War realists as the kind of school of thought that I want to see. Not people who favor the model of liberal hegemony, not neoconservatives, but the likes of George Kennan, who, of course, has long passed, or James Baker. That gives you the sense of the kind of foreign policy vision that I want to bring to the table. Realism, nations advancing their own self-interest. I think that's what we're missing in our foreign policy establishment today. When it comes to somebody who wants to lead the U.S. Federal Reserve, for example, a really important pick that the next president will have to make in January of 2026, I like the likes of Rand Paul or Ron Paul, who have a vision that I share for radical reform of the U.S. Federal Reserve, restoring dollar stability as a single mandate. But in any case, whoever it is in a cabinet position, it is going to have to be somebody who shares my commitment to an originalist understanding of the Constitution. And Leland, one of the things we've already done that no other campaign has done is we've released our list of federal judges and Supreme Court picks. That's something that's actually provided greater transparency for how I see the Constitution. And I think it's also going to have to be cabinet members and other federal employees who are committed to my vision to reduce the federal employee headcount by 75% by the end of my first term, 50% by the end of the first year. So these are going to have to be agency heads who are, yes, willing, ready, able, and even have the energy to actually fire potentially a majority of the people reporting into them. That is how we restore integrity in our constitutional republic.
All right, so I got James Baker and I got Ron or Rand Paul. Any other former cabinet members, any other current cabinet members that you'd be willing to say this is the kind of person I'm looking for?
Well, look, we're sitting here in August before the first debate, still 5 months in advance of the first primary. Many of them could even be other people who are running in this race for U.S. president. I'm looking forward to that debate stage. I'll be keeping an eye and
Okay.
remembering who's actually doing next best to see if actually they might actually occupy a pretty good cabinet role. I think there are good governors in this, a lot of good Republican governors, from Brian Kemp to Kim Reynolds to Kevin Stitt to Kristi Noem. I mean, the list goes on. So I think we have a deep bench to choose from. But that bench of red state governors will be one of the places that I look for my cabinet as well.
All right, so that's where the team of rivals comes from.
Yes.
If it would be. Anybody who's on the debate stage that you're going to be with that you think could make up part of that team of rivals?
Look, I actually think pretty highly of most of I don't want to call them competitors. I'll call them colleagues who are on that debate stage. You don't hear me bashing other candidates because I'm going to need each of them to play their role when it comes to reviving this nation. And so, yes, I do think that this presidential campaign will put some of them to the test. I think a certain number of them will be eligible for cabinet positions in my administration. I also want to say a word about Trump. I think Trump was an excellent president. I think his defeat of Hillary Clinton in 2016 was an important political event that stopped the leftward march through our government and our institutions. And so I expect to take him as an advisor as well, as I'm actually taken to the next level, our America First agenda, shutting down that administrative state. There were some forces that stopped him that I expect will not stop me. But I will be proud to still learn from the foundation that he laid and even understand what he would have done differently. So that's the way I think about my fellow competitors in this race. They're people who I will rely on in different ways from the White House as I lead this nation forward. This is not a one-man job. This is a team sport. That's the way I see it.
All right, we'll get back a little later to how you'd shut down the administrative state. Meantime, Deval Patel, who's a financial consultant here in Chicago, with us now.
Great. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to Chicago. So regardless of who you voted for, it's not a secret that 2016, 2020, highly divisive for the country. Behind closed doors, when I speak to my more left-leaning friends, it's clear that we all want the same things. We might disagree on policy of how to get to the outcome, but it's very clear that everyone's pretty much on the same page. So what is your value proposition, regardless of party standing, on how you're going to unite the country and especially convince, let's say, folks in Chicago who have largely voted a certain way for most of their lives on why you are the right candidate to unite the country regardless of policy?
Deval, thank you. That's such an important question. We're skating on thin ice as a country now. I do not want to see us march to some national divorce. I want to lead us to a national revival. The first and most important catalyst to do that is a landslide election in 2024. This cannot be another 50.1 election. It just can't. I think that is risky for the country. It may take some of that ice and actually run some cracks through it that I do not want to see happen. I think I am the only candidate in the Republican field who can actually deliver that landslide because we are bringing young people with us in droves. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president in the Republican Party. I have lived the American dream. This country has given me much. Son of immigrants who came to this country with no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. Did it while marrying my wife, raising our 2 sons. That's the example we want to set for this country of what is possible, regardless of whether you're black or white, regardless of whether you are Democrat or Republican. That's the way it's done in the United States of America. That is what unites us. And I think the way we get to national unity, actually, from the White House isn't just through policy, because we're going to disagree on a wide range of contentious policies. But I think half the role of U.S. president is setting a tone of national character, of being a president in the White House. And I think it's been a long time since we've had one who meets this high standard, where I can look my 2 sons in the eye and tell them in good conscience that whether or not I agree with his policies, at least I want you to grow up and be like him. I think that's an important part of how the next president can actually reunite this country. That's the standard I want you to hold me to when I'm in that position, if you all put me there.
Thank you.
Is that going to work for your friends, you think?
We're still a year away, but I think we're on our way there.
One more thing I want to add, and we could share this with your friends too, for what it's worth, is some people think, good people, even in the Republican Party, believe the way we get to national unity is through compromise. I actually see it differently. I think the way we get to national unity is by being uncompromising about the principles that actually make us American. The pursuit of excellence, meritocracy, free speech, the rule of law, self-governance over aristocracy. if we're being honest, those are extreme ideals. Those are radical ideals. But that's what makes America itself. And our strength in our country is not our diversity. In some ways, we have gotten so obsessed with celebrating our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common creed. E pluribus unum means from many one. That's actually what we're going to have to revive. That which unites us across our diversity, that's our true strength.
Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned your faith, which has become an issue on the campaign trail.
Yes.
In fact, a Democratic congressman, prominent Democratic congressman, came to your defense when you were attacked by a bigoted MAGA pastor over your Hindu faith. We just came from Iowa. They have a history of electing and choosing in their caucuses conservative Christians, right? Pat Robertson, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, the list goes on. Faith has become an issue in presidential politics, right? We've got Obama and Reverend Wright, Mitt Romney, Mormonism, John Kennedy and his Catholic faith. Is your faith fair game in this election?
You know what? I'm going to be very honest. Everything is fair game to ask about in this election. We have to build trust with the public. And so the way I'm running this campaign is nothing's off limits. I'm asking you to put me in the seat of leading this country forward. My job in this election is for you to know, the voters to know who I am and what I stand for. If the voters want what I'm putting up, and I'll be their next president. And if not, I will put my head on my pillow at night knowing that at least I did my part. So am I religious? Yes, I am. I'm Hindu. I'm not Christian. And we are a nation founded on Judeo-Christian values. But here's what I can say with confidence. I share those same values in common. I believe I live by those values more so than many self-proclaimed Christian politicians. And I think that I stand for religious liberty with such ardence that in many ways I'm going to be a better protector of religious liberties than many of the Christian right politicians, or else we wouldn't see the assault on religious liberties that we see today. And the best part is, nobody is going to accuse me of being a Christian nationalist as I do it. And so a big part of my job is to make concepts like faith and family and patriotism cool again for the next generation. I'm a member of a different generation. I want to use that to our advantage to pass on those ideals to the next generation. That's an opportunity. And yes, it might take somebody who's just a little bit different to revive that which we lack. And the real divide in this country, as I see it, even on the front of religion, is not between those who are members of different traditional religions, from Judaism to Christianity to Hinduism to otherwise. It is actually between those who have adopted traditional religion and those who pledge allegiance to a new religion of secularism, wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism. These are new secular religions that have become a substitute for traditional religion. And I think the most dangerous religions of all, Leland, are those where the practitioners refuse to admit that they're actually part of a religion. That's not a religion, that's a cult. That's how you get to a modern climate movement or a modern woke movement that does not make sense on its own terms. And so, yes, I will always tell you who I am. I'll never pretend to be something that I'm not. But I think that honesty is something that voters, including voters in Iowa, will reward. And I am going to say that, yes, are there going to be some people who make some fringe comments? Do those comments from that one MAGA pastor, as was the self-described descriptor, representative of the Christian right? The answer is, in my book, no, it is not. Okay, I went to a church in Iowa this last Sunday, and I went to one the past Sunday, too. I went to Catholic schools. I probably have read the Bible more closely than many Christians that I know. And I can tell you deeply that we share that same value set. And for a guy who's not running for pastor-in-chief but commander-in-chief, that's really what matters.
All right. We're going to get to values here in a minute when we come back. The drastic measures Mr. Ramaswamy proposes in the battle over values between parents and school districts. And we'll get some questions from our audiences in the first two states to decide the Republican primary.